Hey friends, I was really worried this winter about my chickens. I have 8 chickens in my garden coop, and only 2 of them were laying consistently, and I didn't know what was going on. I know that chickens sometimes in some places don't lay as well in the winter, but that's never been a problem for my girls. I didn't know what to do. But it's weird how this happens on the homestead sometimes. I accidentally solved my own problem, and I want to show you how. So, a little backstory on my problem. I have 8 girls over in my garden coop, and I have 11 chickens over in my barn coop. And I've always been very proud of the fact that even through the winter, they lay really well. All the chickens I've ever had have laid well. I guess that I take really good care of them and keep them in a good situation to be able to lay. But this winter was different with just this one coop. These girls weren't laying well. I had 2 reds that were laying great consistently all through the winter. But the other ones who were in the very same conditions, a group of Barred Rocks and Sussex chickens, they weren't laying at all. In fact, for 60 days plus, there were no eggs out of those 6 chickens. They hadn't been molting. They were eating well. I just didn't understand. And I went through all the different things that potentially could be a problem. The first thing I checked was to make sure their run and their coop area was safe, because I know that a lot of times chickens, when they have predator issues, they get really scared and they get traumatized. So I checked the runs, all the fencing, and everything was good. There were no critters getting into their runs. Another thing that I wanted to just make sure of is their living conditions, to make sure that everything was warm, everything was dry, that there wasn't anything that would cause them stress in their coop. We had the plastic for the winter over the outside of the coop, so there wasn't an issue of cold or wind. There wasn't any water or any flooding in the coop, so that wasn't an issue. So I also need to check their food. And when I checked their food, their fermented grains, a mixture of oats and wheat and barley, everything looked good. There wasn't any rancidness. This is a really, really nutritious and tasty thing for our chickens. They've eaten this for years. And we have a video that I will link at the end to show you how to make this. But this was not the problem. They were well fed. It was also important for me to check my birds physically. Of course, you do this all the time as a homesteader, but I wanted to do it specifically to see if there were any issues that were affecting a large majority of these birds. 6 out of 8 would be very unusual. But I checked, and I checked the digestive system and the reproductive tract. I wanted to make sure that they didn't have a sour crop or a hard area in their gizzard area up here. And then check their bottoms as well for pasty butt, which is pretty common for birds, and they checked out fine. I also wanted to check to make sure their eggs weren't maybe stuck sideways in their oviduct, which would be very, very uncommon to have that happen for so many birds in one flock. Anyway, I looked and they all checked out. There wasn't any problem, so I was stumped. So I was at my wit's end. It had been more than 60 days, and I never got more than 2 eggs a day, only from the same birds. The other birds just were not responding to anything that I was trying to do, and I was really worried that maybe I had a big issue. So one day I was out with the girls and I saw a little bit of new growth of some plants that they really like to eat, and I pulled some of it up. It was February, so they're just starting to grow for the season, and I decided to pick a handful and throw it in the coop. The results were almost instantaneous. It was amazing. The very next day, we went from 2 eggs to 5 eggs. And then the day after that to 7 eggs. Just from that one thing that I did. There wasn't any other variable. I wasn't changing any of the other food. The weather didn't change appreciably. It was amazing. All from a salad bar I found even before our blueberries started blooming. Let me show you the things that I fed my chickens that might help your chickens if they're not laying in the late winter. So here's our chicken salad bar that grows just naturally in the late winter and early spring. Just things that are around that I can pick and very easily give to my chickens. We've got here, this is called chickweed, aptly named because chickens love it, and it grows so much around here that you can get a volume of it as well. So this is chickweed climbing. And then we've got these leaves here and the little flowers, you can see those. That's called purple dead nettle, and it's full of nutrients that chickens love. Now, I didn't realize that these plants were so instrumental in waking up their reproductive systems to the point where they're just making eggs so quickly after eating. But here's another one right here. This is called speedwell with these little purple flowers that are beautiful. Speedwell is also a very nutritious plant for chickens. So it's like this herbal salad bar that you can just pick and use for your chickens. And it really is amazing how quickly it made a difference. Ironically, these are three plants that in the spring, Heidi and I like to forage. We love foraging for things that grow naturally outdoors. And these three things are things that sometimes in the spring we'll put in our salads, our lettuce, but then these things just make such a nutritional profile. And I do know that there's lots of vitamins, vitamin C, vitamin A, vitamin K that are in these plants, as well as a lot of vegetable protein. I don't know though why it helps chickens, maybe for the same reasons. Maybe it allows for some key to unlock their reproductive system after a long winter's nap. Now we do check with an app to make sure that the plants are what we think they are, because it's very important not to misidentify plants. But if you find these in your yard or around your fences or along the walls of your outbuildings, definitely pick them and throw them in the coop. You might be amazed at how quickly your egg production will jump. I am so glad my girls are happy and healthy now and making eggs just like they were meant to do. And I'm really glad that I was able to help them through this process. And now we have so many more eggs and they seem to be really happy and thriving. And I'm glad to find a solution to a problem. It's always fun on a homestead when you have a challenge to be able to figure out the why. And I don't know exactly why this works, but just having naturally occurring medicines on the property for our animals is fantastic. So I'm glad that I could help from my learning process, maybe to give you some ideas as well in yours. From our homestead to yours, blessings.